Hi, everyone. This is Barb Corley. I am Pickaway County Provider Liaison. Welcome to our March 2023 Provider Meetup. This evening's discussion is going to be about self-care. So if you weren't able to attend this evening, I hope obviously this is coming through clearly via recording for you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Okay. So again, this evening's topic is going to be provider wellness and self-care. I always like to start a presentation with definitions, and I think we're all pretty conscious of what self-care is and wellness. It's kind of a it's kind of a word that's thrown around a lot. What I like about these definitions, though, is self-care is defined as the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. I like the phrase about taking action, a little ownership for us, as well as the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. I think the protecting is very important. I think it stresses overall the importance of self-care and the value there is in making self-care a regular practice. Wellness, on the other hand, is defined as the state of being in good health, especially as an actively pursued goal. So we all think of wellness in terms of taking care of our health, maybe our mental health. They really go kind of hand in hand with self-care. And I think sometimes you might hear them described in two different paths. But I kind of liked how these overlapped and really stressed the importance of protecting um, our own well-being. So why is it so important? Well, I'll give you a perfect example and a really good graphic. This is your brain on a daily basis. Um, we're all inundated with work to-dos, personal to-dos, stressors, emotions, things we can control, things we can't control. And self-care is about creating space for ourselves within our already busy lifestyle. Creating space allows for a slower pace and relaxation and a decrease in stress. So all of these things over here on the right-hand side are many things. They pop up, they pop into your day. You can't control them. Having a good self-care practice or tactics in place that work for you when things get a little out of control is the importance. It allows you to punch a hole in all this madness to find a little bit of time for you. You, as it says here, you must be a part of the equation. Um, and I like to think of self-care as in pretty simple terms as what fills your cup versus what drains it. What fills your cup is your self-care. All this minutia and the busyness on the right-hand side of your screen is what drains it. So for everything that drains it, it's always good to have balance. So what holds us back from self-care? Typically, it's giving ourselves permission to take time for ourselves. Uh, Generally, we are a lot of things to a lot of people. There are a lot of different areas in our lives that need attention. And we usually come at the very bottom of that list, which is not always the best practice. There's the adage or the old adage, the adage recently where they say, you know, when you get on an airplane, put your oxygen mask on first before you help the person next to you. And that's important in daily life as well. If you don't take care of yourself and look after yourself, you aren't able to take good quality care of the people that are in your responsibility. Typically, we have excuses like I don't have time, I don't have the money to do it. The truth is, self-care doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it certainly doesn't have to take a lot of money. There are many things you can do for self-care that are absolutely free. So I guess the importance of this is to just recognize that there are ways around, there are ways to implement self-care into your life rather easily. I love this quote. I've come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgent. Caring for myself is an act of an act of survival. I love this because we do think of self-care as primarily the first thing that comes to your mind is manicures, pedicures, and that's self-indulgent, and that's generally as well. I don't have the money. Um, when you look at self-care on a deeper level, self-care is an act of survival because without stopping take a moment for yourself and renew and refresh yourself and re-energize yourself, you will burn out quickly. And that is a serious, serious health concern, especially in the world for us as DSPs, direct care workers. That's tremendous. We're working a lot of hours. We're working a lot of shifts. We're filling in for people. We have more work generally than we know what to do with. So it's very important, even more so, to carve out time and make self-care, whatever it looks like to you, a priority. So this evening, I just wanted to touch on a few areas of self-care, um, just to give you some ideas and maybe some areas to think about. We automatically think of mental care. We automatically think of physical care, like diet and exercise, and those are included in this list. But there are a couple others, which you might not might not automatically think of. And I think a good self-care routine touches on all of these at some point. Not suggesting you have to do these every day, or all of these every day, um, but it does give you a good idea on maybe certain things, and you might recognize in your life when, in your own person, when certain areas might need to be tapped into than others. So here we go. So the first is mental. These are going to be activities that help declutter your mind and reduce your stress levels. Um, and we're going to go into these a little bit more detail and give some examples in a moment. There's physical wellness. This automatically comes to mind. Activities and habits that help and keep your body strong and healthy. This is what everybody tells you: to have a cardio plan, to have exercise, get out and walk. That one comes to mind pretty easily. Emotional wellness. This is becoming aware of and identifying what you're feeling and allowing yourself to channel those feelings in a way that benefits your overall wellness. This can relate to toxic relationships. This can relate to just having moments when you're so overwhelmed and all you really want to do is cry, or scream into a pillow. Basically, taking the time to address those emotions and that emotional release so that you get them out. I always like to say there's more room out than there is in. Um, the next area of wellness is spiritual. And again, this may come to mind for a lot of folks, but these are activities that nurture your spirit and that allow you to think bigger than yourself. Again, it's not limited to religion. It can be, most assuredly, but I like to think of this too as your spirit, like who you are at your core, um, and that doing activities that allow you to think of yourself, realize where you are in the world, that the world is not just on your back necessarily and your responsibility, but that you are a part of it. And again, we'll go into some examples here in a moment. And then the last one is social. And this one really surprised me. This one kind of caught me off guard. This involves your connections with other people. Um, a lot of times we think of self-care as something we do for ourselves that has to be self-motivated, self-generated. And there's a lot of wellness we get when we connect with others. A lot of energy we pull from them, support, certainly laughter, hopefully. Um, so that area, that was one that kind of caught me off guard. So before we get into examples, I just wanted to touch on what does a lack of self-care look like in each of these areas. So in terms of lack of mental self-care, you could have frequent forgetfulness, scrambled thoughts, overwhelm, distracted, lack of focus. We certainly are all juggling so many incoming notifications from your phone, um, email, phone calls, mail in the mailbox, unexpected things throughout the day. A lot of this are all these little pieces of information flying around in your brain that can all lead to that scrambled thoughts. It's a lot. We handle more today than past generations ever even considered. And it catches up to you after a while. So that's why it's good to kind of focus in on your mental health, and what your mental self-care practice looks like. Lack of self-care in terms of physical. It could be fatigue, headaches, muscle tension, indigestion, poor nutrition and eating habits, poor medical care. Again, we're pulled in so many directions. Typically, we're the last ones. We're the ones that generally get the short end of the stick. So we're going to eat less than healthy meals. We're going to grab it and run because we're pulled in so many different directions. Obviously, when you feel tension and when you feel stress, certainly headaches, muscle tension, that's all going to, everything that you're feeling is going to react through, you're going to feel it through your body. Your body is going to be a signal. A lack of emotional self-care. You could feel tearful, irritable, agitated, overwhelmed, anxious, worried, depressed. All of those are just from basically emotional overwhelm. We deal with a lot of things, but a lot of those things in life come with emotions attached to them. They have an emotional response to us. Um, I notice this myself the most when I start to feel overwhelmed. When I know that I'm burning the candle at both ends, I feel it emotionally before I see it anyplace else. And this is actually what helps me. I've learned to recognize this as, okay, I need to slow down. I'm doing too much. A lack of self-care in terms of spiritual. You could feel disconnected. It could be feelings of a lack of purpose, lack of direction or meaning in your life, and you could just feel adrift. Again, this isn't necessarily all religious based, but this is like, I think of this in terms of your spirit, who you are at your core. And that's where, disconnected comes in. Maybe you're not connecting enough with other people. Maybe your circumstances have you grinding a lot of things out and handling a lot of issues and a lot of matters by yourself. It's all on you. And that can really weigh a person down, most assuredly. Um, the last one, a lack of self-care in terms of social self-care. You can feel lonely, isolated, again, lack of connection, and just a lack of fun in your life. Um, if you're anything like me, I tend to be pretty work oriented, and I have to really make myself focus on fun. And when I do that, it generally involves other people. It has to involve other people, because if left to my own fruition, I'm not going to probably do it on my own. Uh, so you can, obviously loneliness and isolation happens when you have a very stressful work schedule, very full work schedule. If you're pulling down long hours in a day, you don't have an opportunity to connect. And social can mean connecting with, I would say social media, Facebook, Messenger, and stuff like that. But I would also stress the face-to-face, the phone calls. I firmly, in my heart of hearts, don't believe social media can really replace what we get from in-person, one-on-one connection. So that's just a quick snapshot of what a lack of self-care might manifest and look like in each of us. It can all be different. We can all look different, but these are kind of just some random ones that I've kind of pulled together to kind of help you realize. And like I said, if you recognize these, it's a really good way to notice these in your daily life in terms of when you're feeling irritable, like, ooh, this is a sign. Maybe it's a trigger for you to realize, okay, I need to take some time for myself. The goal always with self-care is that you not get to these points, but we're human and life is what it is. So we're all going to get to that point. The trick is to catch some of these things before they become too significant and serious to where it's seriously negatively impacting your health. Okay, so next we're just going to talk about some examples. Again, I'm not here to tell you what kind of a self-care practice you need to do. I'm here to give you some ideas that will hopefully get your gears grinding to think of what works for you. What works for me may not work for you. If it does, fantastic. If some of these ideas are awesome, then great, take them and run with them. I'm totally okay with that. If it's one less thing you have to sit and think about, try them. There's no wrong answer. And certainly, if you try something and find it's not, you tried it, move on, try something else. Yeah, so create a list of, in these different areas, create a list for yourself. It can be a short list so that when you recognize maybe the triggers from the previous slide where you recognize your lack of self-care showing up in yourself, that you have this list ready and you can go to it and say, okay, I'm feeling really frazzled emotionally. What do I know that works well for me? And then it's done. The thinking is done already for you and you can just act, and that's huge. So we said earlier, mental self-care refers to activities that help you declutter your mind and reduce your stress levels. One of my favorite things to do is a brain dump. This can be to-dos. That's usually my go-to for the most part. I have a lot of little random things flying around in my brain, and oh, nothing wears me out worse than that. It actually ends up manifesting physically. I physically feel exhausted because my brain is trying to hold on to these things. With a brain dump, what I love is I tell everybody, write them down so it's the paper's responsibility to remember and not yours. Another brain dump that you can do is worries. If you have a tremendous heavy worry, weighing on your mind or multiple, um, write that down. That way, the worry, sometimes when you write it down and see it on paper, it could seem possibly like, oh, wow, this is, this is a little crazy. I'm overreacting to this. Or it might be, no, that's exactly what I'm feeling. And then I would encourage you maybe to form a plan. Um, the only way to counteract a worry is to form a plan for if and when that worry becomes a reality. So if you have a plan in place, then you don't have to necessarily worry that you're going to be caught off guard or something unexpected. Another idea for mental self-care is journaling in terms of emotions and experiences. Um, Good and bad, honestly. I like to journal. I don't do it as regularly as I would like, but I find I like to just sit down sometimes and just purge what's going on. It's kind of like a little time capsule for me, but positive and negative emotions, positive and negative experiences. I do find it very cathartic once I write it. Either most people tell you to write it by hand. I like to type it because I think faster than my pen writes. So yeah, so just do it for what it is for you and what works for you. Try it and see if it works. For another mental self-care idea is a slower daily pace, meaning do less. Um, I recently came upon a word that has just kind of haunted me all month, and that word is capacity. What is your mental capacity? What is your physical capacity? I like to think I'm going to get 30 things done in a day. I never do. And the weight of those 30, trying to do those 30 things, can be a stressor, can be a mental stressor. So I would encourage you to use a brain dump idea to get all your to-dos on paper and then plug those into your daily routine or your daily calendar, fewer at a time, so that it's a slower daily pace so that you're doing less and it's less manic and overwhelming. A slower daily pace also will mean you'll take in less information at a time, which is going to overall prevent overwhelm. And then it creates white space in your day. Again, slower pace is creating space, and it's going to give you time to breathe and time to think and to process and let all this other incoming information gives you a chance for it to work together so that you can come up with ideas and not feel like it's a constant hamster wheel. Another idea for self-care for mental is delegate or delete. Look at all the things you have to do. Is there anything that you can give to someone else to do or delegate to someone else, or just frankly delete it? Like, yes, it might be nice to do right now, but I don't have the capacity and I don't have the bandwidth. So I delete it. I'll come back to it some other time. Mental reading for fun. Reading is a tremendous distraction. I know it's kind of a mental. You might think, well, when I'm reading silently, my brain is still clicking, but it's working in a different way. And if you're reading something you enjoy, it's total stress relief. Activities with your hands, coloring, doodling. One of the one of the recent phrases that I heard is when your brain gets really tired and you're overusing your brain, they encourage you to do something with your hands. And I've done this, I've tried this there, and it really works because your brain doesn't necessarily shut off, but it grinds less like a computer hard drive. It's going less. So I would highly, if you're sitting doing a lot of brain work, stop and go do something with your hands. Go get dirty, pull weeds. I don't care what you want to do. Go bake, something like that. But try that. It's tremendously helpful. I was really surprised. And then the last self-care idea for mental is protect your time. Um, Boundaries, they're hard for everybody. Um, but set a boundary. Like if you come home, what time do you lay the phone down and just sit on the couch and veg? Um, it can look like whatever it needs to look like for you in your given situation, but protect your time. Okay, next we're going to jump over to physical. This will go kind of quick because this is kind of familiar to everybody. But again, these are activities and habits that will help keep your body strong and healthy. Hydration. Nobody drinks enough water. Nobody drinks enough fluid is my experience. I'm guilty as charged. Um, Rest and sleep, they're not the same. Sleep, obviously, everybody knows they tell you you should get a certain amount of sleep, and that can be a challenge. Um, Rest is different from sleep in that rest is you're not always sleeping when you're resting. You can be taking time to veg on the couch. It's the slowing down, it's the creating, it's protecting your time and creating that white space. And there are different areas of rest. I actually have, I believe I have a resource at the end that I found that I highly recommend. Another physical self-care is nutrition. Grab a healthy snack, not a bad one. You can't underestimate the power of that. You know, one drive through the Wendy's, I get that. Quickly, when you're stressed, stuff like that can become a habit, and then that compounds over time. Deep breaths, breathing. I don't think any of us breathe deep enough, but typically when I get stressed, I breathe very shallowly. So I definitely, when you have a moment of stress, stop, close your eyes, and focus on deep, full lung and lung engaging breaths. And just, it also helps you slow down. Um, Purposeful movement. Dance to your favorite song. I don't care if you have to go in the ladies' room in a stall. If you want to bust a move, bust a move. It is euphoric at times. I've had to do this a couple times not long ago, and I was like, why don't I do this more often? There's yoga, there's exercise. We all know those already. It's self-care. Exercise can look like a lot of different things. Exercise can look like walking your dog. Exercise can look like weeding your garden. Exercise can be take the stairs. If you have the option between stairs and the elevator, take the stairs. What I find is when you plug these little things into your daily life and you recognize them as healthy things you're doing for yourself, it makes you feel better, even though you just took the stairs. Maybe you went up a floor, you know, from the ground level to the second floor. Big deal. You can look at that and you can check that off as a look what I did for myself today. See, I can work things in there. I do matter enough to be able to stop taking the elevator and take the stairs. It's little things like that that make a difference. Ultimately, for physical self-care, just move in one way or another every day. Move, be it walking, be it stretching, be it yoga, whatever makes you feel good, whatever works in your lifestyle, just move. All right, so next we're going to jump into emotional self-care, which is becoming aware of and identifying what you're feeling and allowing yourself to channel those feelings in a way that benefits your overall wellness. So a lot of these are therapy. I never underestimate the power of seeing a professional for therapy. It is an act of courage. It is not a sign of weakness. They can teach you tremendous things that will help you moving forward. So I never discount the option of therapy if you feel that you need therapy. I highly concur and embrace it, suggest you embrace it. Create boundaries. Boundaries, it's a tough one. Boundaries are for you. They're not for other people necessarily. Well, they are, but mainly they're for you. And that can be hard because we often put ourselves last on the list. So basically, start small. Okay, every night after 7 o'clock, I'm not answering my phone. Start there. Start small. I highly recommend that with everything. Just try a little thing. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're probably not going to really want to do it. And you may fall off the wagon and break your own rule a couple times. The trick is to keep at it with boundaries. Release your emotions. Cry when you need to, vent when you need to, laugh when you need to. Be grateful. Celebrate all the things that are positive in your life and all the things you have to be grateful for because we all have more than we know possibly how to count. You can celebrate those through journaling. You can do all of this through journaling if you like. Um, Relationships. Release your emotions to other people, your favorite people, the people who feel like sunshine is what I like to say. Um, yeah, I don't think very often we step into what we're feeling. We try to blow it off, move past it, push it aside versus owning it. I think it's very important to own your emotions. And then once you own it, you channel it into, when you need to vent, you're not going to channel that anger or that frustration into throwing a punch at someone. You're going to channel it better, but holding it in is the least productive thing you can possibly do because it just builds. Um, Getting it out is cathartic. Okay, so spiritual self-care. These are activities that nurture your spirit and allow you to think bigger than yourself. Again, not limited just to religion. Um, I am a religious person. I am a spiritual person. I see them kind of as two different things, but they kind of run in parallel. Obviously, spiritual self-care. What is your religious practice? If you have one. For some people, that can be prayer. Whether or not you're a religious person, you can still pray. Um, Meditation, it's tricky for some. Um, I think a lot of times we tend to make that a little complicated, but it can simply be sitting in silence with your eyes closed, listening to yourself breathing. It can be sitting in silence, listening to nature. Um, it's a lot simpler, I think, than people realize. Again, sitting in nature. They find nature is one of the quickest ways for people to de-stress. If you have that opportunity, take advantage of it. Sit in silence, enjoy some quiet time. I don't even care if this is in the bathroom. I think most people, if they can't get away from people, they hide in the bathroom. If that's where you find your quiet time, take your quiet time where you can find it. I like to think of these as any activities for your spiritual self-care, any activities that make you come alive, that lighten your spirit. Um, if you like to work in the yard, if that lightens your spirit, if that just makes you feel so good, do it. Do more of that as much as you can. You don't have to go out for 3 hours a day if all you can carve out is 10 minutes. Do it. Don't underestimate the power of just a few minutes of doing something that makes you feel good. Again, reading. This can be spiritual reading. It can be any reading that you really like. If reading brings you joy, that's going to lift your spirit. That's huge. And that's the ultimate goal of what we're talking about. If you have a hobby, um, obviously, like I said earlier, activities that make you come alive are usually your hobbies. So tap into those, make those a priority wherever you can. Again, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it doesn't matter, but do it. In the act of doing it, you will recognize that you've made that time for yourself. And then introvert versus extrovert. So most people think introvert is somebody who's shy, and then an extrovert is someone who's outgoing. Actually, an introvert is someone who gets energy from being alone. They're usually drained by being around people. An extrovert is someone who is drained by being alone and gets energy from being around other people. So that's part of who you are at your core, and that's part of who your spirit is. I tend to be more of an introvert. I'm a little bit of both, but when I need to regroup and to refill my tank, I'm an introvert. I need to just be quiet and not necessarily by myself, but not in a group of people. So I would encourage you to pay attention to that, and really pay attention to what fills your cup versus what drains it. And then our last area is social self-care, which involves our connections with other people. Again, this is connect with friends. In person is huge. Phone, virtually, even by mail. Take a moment, write a note to somebody and send a note. You'll feel better connecting with that person, whatever it takes to stay connected to people. Um, a lot of times it can be, like I said earlier, for venting, but sometimes just talking to friends about just things that aren't a stress to you can just be a nice, pleasant distraction and very uplifting because it kind of takes your mind off of the things that are weighing you down. And then in-person activities for social, make new friends, being around others. Um, Again, if you're an introvert, you need to do this probably a little less. You might want to do this a little less than extroverted folks, um, based on where you find your energy. So it's just important to tap into these. I would say as an introvert, you may do the social want more one-on-one than you would in a group. But that's to your discretion. Try things and see how they feel. What I love about the image on the right is, and you may have, I kind of felt it as I was talking through this with you, these all intermix and these all connect every area of self-care. So when we'll take emotional, when you are overwhelmed, need to vent, need to cry, and you want to talk to somebody, that's social. So your emotional connects to social because you need to vent to your trusted confidant or your best friend. Physical can also tie into social. You may like to take a walk with a neighbor. Um, and then sometimes when you tap into spiritual self-care, you'll feel better mentally, you'll feel better emotionally. Social may affect mental and emotional. All of these are intermingled. That's why it's so important to try to tap into all of these. Like I said, not on a daily basis. It's not homework to stress you out, but a good balance of self-care should touch on all five of these areas. So it's something to consider. And when you look at these, you can reflect on maybe which ones you do more of, less of, and maybe if what you do now for self-care doesn't feel like enough, maybe adding the areas that you're missing might help be a little improvement for you. So again, self-care doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to be complicated. This thing on the side, the image on the side is a perfect example. Self-care can be forgiving yourself. Self-care can be spending time alone, asking for help, setting boundaries, saying no. Ooh, tough ones. Um, Asking for what you need, putting yourself first. It can be little things. I like to jokingly say part of my self-care is most of you don't know me personally, but I hope to know more of you. I love paper and pens. One of the best things for me in my self-care and to make me feel great is to write with my favorite notebook and my favorite pen. You can't underestimate the power of writing with a good writing utensil. So it's little things like that. When I have my cup of coffee in the morning, I use my favorite cup. Um, Little things like that. I see that as self-care. I don't like to make it complicated. It's little things that kind of boost me throughout the day. And again, like it says, their self-care is going to look different for each of us. I can't tell you what your self-care should look like. I can give you ideas to try if you're at a loss. Um, and if what I've given you sounds like a perfect recipe for you, then by all means, take it and run with it. Okay, just coming towards the end, just some tips and some ideas. Try new things, think outside the box. Like I said, if you've never tried journaling and you're interested, try it, see if it works. If it doesn't for you, that's not a problem. But small changes can have big results in your overall well-being. So if you decide you want to try journaling and maybe you journal once a week and that makes you feel better, that's fine. Nobody says you have to do it every day for an hour. You can make it whatever you want it to be. Again, I touched on this already. Areas of wellness activities cross over. Connecting with friends, which is social, will have benefits to you emotionally and mentally. Laughter helps you both mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And consider adding activities that cover more than one area, basically more bang for your buck in terms of self-care. So make it a game if you have to. See how many of those areas you can tie together in an activity to cover those areas to help refill your reserves. Remember to tap into your senses. So I mentioned earlier, maybe sitting in silence is your thing. Consider adding your favorite beverage in your favorite mug. I've started doing this not long ago, and it really seems to just drive home the enjoyment of what I'm doing. Again, if I have to sit and write out a bunch of stuff and take a bunch of notes on something, I'm going to do it with my favorite notebook and my favorite pen. It just seems to magnify and seems to just add a little bit more to the experience. If you're walking in nature, wear your favorite scarf or sweater and to add a sense of feeling cozy. Doing a lot of writing, again, include your favorite pen, personal favorite. Um, Adding to an already busy schedule, think of self-care lightly. Don't think of it as something strict and rigid. Um, you can, like I said, 10 to 15 minutes, pop it in there somewhere. I don't care if it's 5 minutes. It will have an impact. Small changes can have big results. One idea that you could do if you do have a busy schedule, I tend to do this, is you bookend your day. So add little things to your morning or evening routines, like reading, journaling, maybe a podcast episode you want to listen to. I tend to, when I'm getting ready in the morning, listening to podcast episodes. And in the evening, as I'm in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, I'll read. So I kind of bookend my day. And then take breaks during your day. Take a walk if you have the opportunity. Go sit in silence, go sit in nature. One of the things I used to do when I worked in the corporate world was I would take my lunch, I'd go sit in my car because I was surrounded by noise and chatter all day. I would just sit in silence, windows up if it was not scorching hot out, and just sit in silence and just enjoy that. And finally, there's no time like the present to start. Start small, easier. It's easier to get in a groove and get your momentum going. Momentum starts slowly. So once you start to feel like you're really enjoying some of these ideas, you'll want to do more and or just stick with the ones that you already do. And if you're a future caregiver, if you see um, more responsibility, caregiving responsibilities. Maybe you're taking on more hours or a shift maybe in a client that's becoming going to be a little bit more resource heavy in terms of what they need from you. Get a routine in place now, so you'll be ready. It's always better to put things into place early than to have to start. But if you don't have one in place, please don't not put something in place because you don't already have it in place. So I mentioned earlier, I had a couple resources. These are three really good books that I've read on the subject that I really liked. What is this? The Art of Arranging Yourself in the World. It's called Cozy. Fascinating book to me. Maybe I'm a nerd. I don't know. I don't care because I enjoyed it. The Power of Rest. This is when I talked earlier when sleep alone is not enough. Rest and sleep, not the same. And this book will actually explain those to you. And it was just fascinating. Gave me a whole different perspective. And then Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. That's a lovely book. They're very easy reads. So if you do like to read and are interested in these kind of topics, highly recommend those. So in summary, self-care is about creating space for what rejuvenates you, brings you joy, lifts or eases your spirits. The value of self-care and wellness can't be ignored. Basically, if you don't take care of yourself, then it can't be ignored because it's reached a point where it's severe and it's significant to your overall health and well-being. It doesn't have to be complicated to make a difference. Again, start small. Be intentional about adding moments to your daily routine. Again, if you got a 30-minute lunch, if you can work in a walk to clear your head, sit in your car in silence, whatever it looks like for you, pop it in where you can. Don't underestimate the power of a few quiet moments. That's super important. I've noticed that in myself because I can get wrapped pretty tight and I can overschedule myself very quickly. Again, self-care is not selfish. It's a matter of survival. It's about surviving and thriving in the roles you hold, not just as a DSP, not as an independent, not as a caregiver, not as a mom, as a wife, as a sister, as a friend, or as a husband, father. It's about filling your cup so that you can um, give your energy to those roles and do your best in those roles to the best of your ability while still taking care of yourself, not to your own detriment. Okay, so usually there's a question and answer. So if you have questions, if you would like to discuss this further, I am a total self-care nerd. I love this topic. If you have ideas you'd like to share, I am happy to pass those along. I'd love to know what works for you. Here's my contact information. You can reach me at hello@CorleyCaregiverConsulting.com. This is my cell phone number. You can text me, call me, email me. And I would invite you to visit my website. At the bottom, you scroll down to the bottom, you can subscribe. Every month, I do what I call the 5 Things newsletter, which are 5 things that I've used in my active caregiving role over the past month. So every month, it's 5 new things. It could be a podcast episode, it could be a book, it could be a life hack, it could be anything. So yeah, I encourage you to check that out and just to stay connected. Again, I am an active caregiver. I am an independent provider for my sister with developmental disabilities since 1990. So I've been doing this a long time. And I'm also a caregiver for my husband, who's a disabled military veteran. So Yeah, I do. I do a lot um, in my daily life that can be draining, that requires the importance of self-care. So, yeah, I can't stress the importance of all these areas and these topics that we've discussed this evening enough. So, if I can be of help to you, if you need help getting a strategy together or just some more ideas, please don't hesitate. Don't be intimidated. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know comments, what you thought of the presentation, anything I missed. Um, Always welcome. So I hope it's been of value to you. If you walked away with one good idea, I'll be thrilled. If you walked away with two, I'll be ecstatic. But please share if you are so inclined. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully at future presentations. Take care.